Jeff Landry's office have investigated for potentially violating the order to halt elective procedures. Guidry indicated women could receive abortions if they are approaching the deadline at which Louisiana considers the procedure illegal. The order also applies to providers such as dental clinics, but only if providers deem the procedures time sensitive, such as those done to prevent infections. The Louisiana Hospital Association welcomed the reopening of some clinics after seeing health systems across the state take a hit from the virus. Two of the state's biggest health systems, Ochsner Medical Center and Our Lady of Lake Regional Medical Center, have in recent days reported steep financial losses from the virus, stemming in part from the cancellation of elective procedures. Ochsner expects to lose up to $130 million in March and April after seeing the number of patients across the providers' hospitals and clinics fall by as much as 70%. On Monday, Our Lady of the Lake said it expects to lose $120 million in March and April as the nonprofit system cuts hours for certain staff, among other steps to fill the holes. The organization received $40 million from the federal stimulus bill. As the state sees continued improvement in key metrics for the virus, officials are planning for a phased reopening of the state's economy, vast swaths of which have been shuttered. For the past week, Louisiana has been trending toward meeting thresholds that the White House recommends states should meet before they start phase one of a gradual reopening. Edwards said Monday that means Louisiana is seeing a downward trend in people reporting symptoms similar to COVID-19, confirmed cases, and hospitalizations. That doesn't mean each day must be better than the last, he added, only that the overall trajectory is in the right direction. The Louisiana Department of Health will brief the governor this week on its own state-specific guidelines for reopening, said Alex Biu, Assistant Secretary for the state's Office of Public Health. What we have right now is a White House proposed plan that doesn't necessarily reflect all the details that we're proposing to the governor. State officials and health experts say Louisiana not only needs to experience a downward trajectory in cases and hospitalizations in order to reopen. The state is working to get a strong enough handle on the virus to be able to identify new cases and isolate not only the patient, but also those he or she came into contact with, a process known as contact tracing. To do that, Bilyeu said the state needs 700 contact tracers to track down those people. The state has only 70 as of Monday. Louisiana also needs the ability to test at minimum 140,000 people a month, Edwards said. Ideally, the state will be able to test around 200,000 a month, which would represent roughly doubling the state's current capacity, according to Bilyeu. It is not clear Monday when the state would be able to meet those levels of contact tracing and testing, though Bilyeu said officials were working to have them in place by May. Courtney Phillips, the new Secretary of the Louisiana Department of Health, said the agency is exploring how to best boost its number of contact tracers, suggesting call center workers could be used for some of the work. The agency has already repurposed some staff to do the work, she added. Edwards also rejected the idea of having different parishes open at different times, something Louisiana House Republican Caucus Chairman State Representative Blake Miguez R.E. Rath urged in a letter to the governor dated Sunday. The governor said the idea was not workable. New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell already has extended a stay-at-home order for the city until mid-May. She said the city would need to see up to 3 weeks of low numbers of confirmed positive cases before she would lift restrictions. Edwards has repeatedly indicated the state could keep its restrictions in place past May 1st, when they're set to expire. Along with contact tracing and diagnostic tests, Edwards has repeatedly said serology tests, which may determine whether people have immunity to the virus after recovering from it, is a key part of the state's strategy to reopen. In recent days, the prospect of widespread serology testing in the immediate future has appeared grim, as officials report problems with many of the tests being used by commercial labs, which often give false positives. Dr. G.E. Ghali, Chancellor of LSU Health Sciences Center of Shreveport, said the school's researchers have developed a serology test along with researchers at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City that could get emergency approval from the Federal Food and Drug Administration in the coming days. Unlike many serology tests that also test positive for other types of coronaviruses, like the common cold, Ghali said the school's own serology test has a sensitivity and specificity of 99.75% for the novel coronavirus. While there are still unknowns about what the testing offers, such as how much immunity people may get from having antibodies, Ghali said such testing will be key to phasing in a opening of the economy by determining who may not be at risk of catching the virus again. The lower risk populations are probably the ones that can go back to work in early May or mid-May, whenever the governor determines is the appropriate time, Ghali said. The whole question is really how to satisfy that, because we're never going to be fully protected as a society until an immunization or vaccination for this becomes available. Oil prices tumble below zero. Louisiana Trade Group warns of potential halt to operations by Kristen Mossbrucker. A price collapse that sunk May oil prices well below the $0 mark on Monday was a rude awakening to a glut that's straining storage capacity and has the potential to halt much of Louisiana's oil production. Benchmark U.S. crude oil fell $55.90, or more than 300%, to settle at negative $37.63 a barrel Monday. The drop into negative territory was chalked up to technical reasons. The May delivery contract is close to expiring, so it was seeing less trading volume, which can exacerbate swings. For the last few barrels in the May contract, they literally had to pay somebody to take the oil, but it didn't impact a huge volume of oil, said Eric Smith, Associate Director of the Tulane Energy Institute. U.S. crude oil for June delivery shows a more normal price, he said. The June price fell 14.8% to $21.32 per barrel, as factories and automobiles around the world remain idled. Demand for oil has collapsed so much due to the coronavirus pandemic that facilities for storing crude are nearly full. Many of our members are being told they cannot deliver crude in May due to storage constraints, and as a result have begun planning to shut in 100% of their Louisiana production, says Gifford Briggs, president of the Louisiana Oil and Gas Association. It's an absolute worst-case scenario. The break-even price for producers is about $37 per barrel, he said. A negative price for May contract oil hit on Monday is unprecedented, and the price has not dropped to single digits since 1973. Big oil producers have announced cutbacks in production in hopes of better balancing supplies with demand, but many analysts say it's not enough and wells are going to get shut down. With that in mind, Ray Lasine, owner of TMR Exploration in Bossier City, is weighing his options for about 200 oil and natural gas wells across Louisiana and Texas. If you start shutting in your wells, then you have zero income, he said. Bankruptcy is an option, but I don't want to do that, Lasine said. We're being closed in on from all directions. Our income has dropped 80%, but my expenses are still at 100%, so you're at a loss immediately. In January, the company was getting about $60 per barrel of oil on the market, but that's since dropped to about $10 per barrel. Lasine remembers cashing in a life insurance policy during the oil bust in the 1980s to stay afloat, but this year has been much worse, he said. In Texas, some of the company's wells are slated to be shut in because crude oil purchasers canceled contracts and there's nowhere to sell or store the excess oil. In some cases, it can cost about $100,000 to plug and abandon an oil and gas well. The company has about 30 employees across the state and is tapping the federal Paycheck Protection Program to keep employees working for at least 2 months. If I laid off my employees, it would be difficult to get them back, he said. It takes about a year to train a new person. Oil prices were expected to get a boost after OPEC and other major oil-producing countries, such as Russia, agreed to cut production by nearly 10 million barrels per day, about a tenth of global supply, starting on May 1st. But industry analysts question whether those cuts will move the needle. It's probably going to get worse before it gets better. It's not going to be enough, said David Dismukes, executive director of the LSU Center of Energy Studies. He said a wave of wells being shut in is expected, but there's an even more difficult scenario for the Louisiana economy. The most scary scenario is when the refineries stop running around here, Dismukes said. Both ExxonMobil and Chalmette Refinery deferred comment to trade organizations. Placid Refinery did not respond. The entire supply chain is backed up, and the only remedy is to increase consumption, which can only happen when people return safely to work and begin to drive the economy, said Tyler Gray, president of the Louisiana Mid-Continent Oil and Gas Association. Refiners all across the Gulf Coast have reduced production of fuels as a result of the demand, he said. At least two ideas have been floated this year for relieving some of the pressure on the oil industry. One proposal that didn't make it through the federal coronavirus relief package was to purchase $3 billion worth of oil for the nation's Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which has an additional 77 million barrels of capacity available in Louisiana and Texas. Instead, in mid-April, the federal government was negotiating to allow oil companies to rent about 23 million barrels of crude oil storage in the reserve for deliveries in May and June. Statewide, Louisiana lost 1,100 jobs in mining and logging, which includes the oil and gas sector, over the past 12 months through March, a decline of 2.9% to 35,600 jobs. About 450 members of the Louisiana Oil and Gas Association, surveyed in recent weeks, estimated that about half the wells in the state could be shut in as a result of the economic downturn. That was when oil was hovering around $20 per barrel. There were 33,650 oil and gas wells operating in Louisiana. There were only 41 oil and gas rigs actively drilling for oil and natural gas across the state, including 24 on land and the remainder in the Gulf of Mexico, according to Baker Hughes data as of April 17. Now, the situation is more dire. Companies can't produce wells at this low cost. Those wells might be lost forever, Briggs said. We're going to need survival measures. The trade organization has lobbied for long-sought severance tax and royalty payment relief during the crisis and is pushing to loosen restrictions of businesses to restart the economy. Some companies may eventually lose leases to produce oil on properties due to contract requirements, Briggs said. On the flip side, natural gas prices increased more than 10% to roughly $2 on Monday. That's good news for companies like Goodrich Petroleum Corporation, which has leases in the natural gas-rich Haynesville Shale in northwest Louisiana. We're about 99% natural gas, so the drop in crude oil sets us up better because as oil wells get shut in, that means less natural gas as a byproduct, says Robert Turnham Jr., president of Goodrich Petroleum. The company has about 50 employees and generated about $120 million in revenue last year. The bulk of its leases are in Louisiana. Okay, a public service announcement. AOC teams up with United Way of Acadiana for Learn United. The United Way of Acadiana has teamed up with AOC and other local groups for Learn United, bridging the digital gap to provide educational resources for households that don't have internet but do have a television. We're looking for teachers and others who could offer something of educational value to send in content to air that will enrich the lives of children staying home all day. To submit content for Learn United, visit unitedwayofacadiana.org/learn-united. Okay, our next story, virus concentrations found around Acadiana. This is by Claire Taylor. For the first time since the coronavirus was confirmed in Louisiana in March, the state health department on Monday released a more detailed look of where in each parish people have tested positive. The health department posted an interactive map online that allows users to click on each census tract in the state to reveal how many people in that area tested positive for COVID-19. Part of North Lafayette Parish near the St. Martin Parish line, along with the Youngsville area and west of Milton, had some of the higher concentrations, between 11 and 16 cases each of confirmed coronavirus. But no single census tract exceeded 17 cases. Other Acadiana cities and parishes, including New Iberia, Crowley, Northern St. Martin Parish, and Franklin, saw case concentrations in the 20s and 30s in some of their census tracts. Two census tracts in Crowley together had 50 cases of coronavirus. In Iberia Parish, one census tract in the city of New Iberia had 33 cases of COVID-19. The northwestern section of St. Martin Parish around Arnoville had 32 cases as of Monday. Excuse me. The St. Mary Parish city of Franklin had a census tract reporting 34 cases of the virus. Last week, St. Mary Parish coroner Dr. Eric Malalson said a Franklin nursing home had been hit hard by COVID-19. At least 23 nursing home residents and 6 employees had tested positive, and at least 3 residents of the nursing home had died, he said. The Louisiana Department of Health had been releasing the names of nursing homes with COVID-19 clusters, but discontinued releasing that information a few weeks ago as the numbers rose. Nursing homes are supposed to report cases to the health department, but are not required to alert their residents or the families of residents when another patient or employee tests positive for the virus. The Trump administration announced Sunday it will start requiring nursing homes to report confirmed coronavirus cases directly to the Centers for Disease Control, and will require nursing homes to tell patients and their families when another resident tests positive. COVID-19 continues to spread to more Louisiana nursing homes and to more residents of those homes. The health department reported Monday another 128 residents of nursing homes in Louisiana have died since the previous report on April 15. As of Monday, 403 nursing home residents have died in connection with the virus. Of the 436 nursing homes in the state, 201, or 46%, have had at least one case of COVID-19. Since last week, the virus has appeared in an additional 77 homes. The number of Louisiana nursing home residents diagnosed with the virus increased by 54% since April 15, a jump of 714 for a total of 2,034 cases. The census tract data released Monday doesn't reveal demographic details such as age, gender, or race, nor does it show where deaths occurred. At a news conference on April 6th, Governor John Bel Edwards revealed that about 70% of the people who died of COVID-19 were African American, even though they make up only about 32% of the state's population. That percentage has been on the decline since. On Monday, the health department revealed that 56.25% of the lives lost to coronavirus in the state were African Americans. Across Louisiana, 1,328 people have died from the virus since the first death was reported March 14, with 32 new deaths were reported Monday in the state, including one in Acadiana occurring in Iberia Parish. Statewide, the health department reported another 595 COVID-19 cases Monday, bringing the total to 24,523. In the 7 parishes that comprise the health department's Region 4, Lafayette, Acadia, Evangeline, Iberia, St. Landry, St. Martin, and Vermilion, 26 new cases were reported Monday for a total confirmed cases of 1,136. Here's a breakdown of cases and deaths by parish as of noon Monday. In Lafayette, 423 cases, up by 4, with 17 deaths. Acadia, 114 cases, up by 4, with 7 deaths. Evangeline, 43 cases, up by 0, no deaths. Iberia, 194 cases, up by 10, 9 deaths. St. Landry, 136 cases, up to 2, 20 deaths. St. Martin, 193 cases, up by 3, 12 deaths. And Vermilion, 33 cases, up by 3, with 1 death. Ray Sutley, remembered as a driving force in radio and a devoted family man, an absolute legend, by Kevin Foote. Some longtime Lafayette residents may not know his name or have ever met Ray Sutley personally, but most locals who ever listened to the radio or watched television in Cajun country over the last 4 decades have heard his voice. The local radio icon died Sunday at age 66 after a battle with lymphoma that lasted more than a decade. There are a lot of people who say, Ray Sutley, I don't think I know him. And then they hear a commercial and say, oh yeah, I hear that guy all the time, said Jay Walker, a longtime radio colleague and voice of UL's Raging Cajuns. They knew that the voice, but just weren't able to put a name with it all the time. But Ray was okay with that because he preferred to be in the background anyway. Walker first met Sutley on June 20th, 1977, the day Walker moved to Lafayette to work at KSMB. Before their days of covering sports at KPEL, they worked together as rock jocks at K94. He was a star, KPEL sports talk show host Steve Peliquin said. Those were the days when local disc jockeys really were celebrities. While celebrity status was never high on Sutley's priorities, it helped him make a huge impact in local radio and television circles. He could do anything in the radio business. Dan McDonald, former UL Sports Information Director, said, because of that voice he had, which was so distinctive, he just sounded different than a lot of people. But he was much more than just a voice. He had so many talents. He just loved radio and just loved the people involved with it. For some, the introduction to Sutley came in the mid-1970s when he was a public address announcer for the Lafayette Drillers, an affiliated AA farm club of the San Francisco Giants. In the 1980s, Sutley was one of the primary hosts of a KPEL sports trivia show where listeners would call in sports trivia questions for Sutley and the rest of the panel. In 1990, Sutley broadcast the first UL softball game on the radio during the NCAA regional tournament in Lafayette. He was also on the UL football broadcast team in that era. 3 years later, Sutley's voice helped earn Cajun softball fans celebrate. 3 years later, Sutley's voice helped early Cajun softball fans celebrate the program's first Women's College World Series appearance from the Ann Arbor Regional. Moreover, Sutley worked on the stat crew for UL football and basketball games for more than 3 decades. You talk about versatility, Peliquin said. People say I'm versatile, but I don't hold a candle to this cat. His versatility's galore. The term legend is often overused, but in this case, it doesn't do it justice because he's an absolute legend in his market. Sutley, a 1972 Acadiana High graduate, also played a key role in bringing talk radio to Lafayette. That was very controversial at the time, McDonald said of the onslaught of such talk radio hosts as Rush Limbaugh, Bruce Williams, and Michael Jackson. Ray says that was the next wave of radio. He saw it coming before a lot of people realized it was coming. It drew a lot of criticism at the time, but think about it. We wouldn't have sports talk and news talk today if it wasn't for that. A lot of those people that complained about that back then are the same people that would be completely up in arms if you took Rush Limbaugh or take sports talk off the air now. Sutley returned to the air on K-Rock, which is now Hot 107.9 FM, also serving as that station's production director until he was too ill to continue. During that stretch, however, his influence in local radio history continued. In 2013, KPEL AM 1420 became the first radio station in the country to broadcast every game of a college softball season. Peliquin made it happen, but it was Sutley that provided the spark. Ray was the driving force behind that, Peliquin said. He put the idea in my head. We were talking one day and he said, this is such a big softball place. We put every baseball game on the air, so why can't we put every softball game on the air? We figured out a way to make it happen. But as much love as Sutley had for the radio industry, his marriage to the former Justine Weeks and their family highlighted the final years of his life. He was most proud of being Eden's dad, and rightfully so, McDonald said. When he met Justine, it changed him. He loved that woman. His world revolved around his family. He still loved the Cajuns and still loved sports, but his priorities changed. His behind the scenes impact on the radio industry, though, never did. He's got the booming voice and that stern look about him, Pelican said. He's one of the few people that I've ever been intimidated by. Number one, because I was in awe of him. And number two, because of his personality traits. But if you got to know him, he had an incredibly dry sense of humor. He was a very tender man. He wasn't one of those radio people that liked being a celebrity. He enjoyed the business side of it more than being a celebrity, and he absolutely loved his family more than anybody could. Okay, canceled blood drives. Coronavirus fears severely impact blood supply. Coronavirus responses have severely impacted the U.S. blood supply as Vitalant and other blood centers across the country are struggling to maintain stable inventories. With school closures and workers at home, 25% of Vitalant's blood collections anticipated in March have disappeared almost overnight, and that number continues to grow. Through the end of June, Vitalant, the nation's second largest blood collector, has had over 1,400 blood drives canceled, resulting in nearly 41,000 uncollected blood donations. Vitalant strongly recommends that healthy donors schedule an appointment for a donation over the coming days and weeks, instead of donating without an appointment right now, to help us better serve donors. Please call 877-258-4825 or visit vitalant.org, VITALANT.org. Vitalant has nearly 125 donation centers across the country. Donors can also give blood at mobile blood drives, which must continue to be organized. Blood donors and mobile blood drives will be needed in the coming weeks and months to ensure a stable blood supply for hospitals. The Lafayette Vitalant Blood Donation Center is located at 1503 Bertrand Drive. So let's get out there and get some blood, you guys. All blood types and components are needed with critical need for platelets and type O blood donations. Platelets have a very short shelf life, only 5 days. Type O negative blood is the universal blood type. ER doctors reach for it first to help stabilize patients before their blood type is known. Vitalant continues to closely monitor the situation and will quickly implement any necessary changes as new information emerges from the CDC and FDA. So make an appointment and get out there and get blood, you guys. I did that a week or so ago. They're very safe, and people need it. So think about that. Guillory eyes measure to ease shortfalls by Ben Myers. Lafayette Mayor President Josh Guillory plans to ask the city and parish councils to get the ball rolling on refinancing more than $300 million in outstanding debt and to issue as much as $40 million in new revenue bonds to cover anticipated shortfalls in revenue. Most of the resolutions on the council's Tuesday agendas are in response to the coronavirus economic crash, the effects of which have not yet hit local government coffers, according to Lori Toops, the city parish's finance director. For now, the administration is seeking the council's approval to take the request to the State Bond Commission, which must give its blessing before the council's vote on any ordinances to refinance debt or issue new bonds. Tube said she roughly estimates sales tax collections to drop 35% through the end of the year, while ratings agencies are automatically assuming a 50% reduction. We know the bond rating is going to go down and just don't want it to go way down, Tube said. The proposals include maximum revenue bonds of $35 million for city government and $5 million for the parish, which is a much smaller operation than the city. Tube said she doesn't anticipate needing to issue that much new debt, if any at all, but that it's necessary to secure the ability to do so if the city and parish run out of money to pay for operations. I've been doing this since the 90s, and I've never had to do one of these, but today's circumstances are that uncertain. I want to make certain I have the ability to, Tube said. Beyond the immediate temporary shuttering of most businesses over the past month, Tube said she is worried that pandemic-related workforce reductions could impair consumer spending for the foreseeable future. When you open the businesses back up, are those businesses able to operate like they did before? They might not be able to get their inventories and their supplies. Tube said if they have to buy parts from different areas of the world to manufacture their goods or sell their services, all that has been disrupted. The historically flush city general fund remains so, at a little more than $50 million, Tube said, but the current fiscal year budget eats into that amount by about $18 billion. Tubes hopes to further stabilize the city's cash flow with savings from refinancing $80 million in sales tax bonds, as well as nearly $200 million in outstanding bonds backed by property taxes, utility bills, and LUS Fiber. Some of that debt could also be restructured to push principal payments down the road, although Tube said that is not a preferable option. Most of these I'm looking for a savings because the interest rates went down. But if I have the ability to take advantage of restructuring something to improve cash flow, I may also do that. Another measure would refinance $25 million in parish property taxes, although these savings would accrue directly to property owners as opposed to the parish general fund. Plans have been in the works for this measure before the pandemic, Tube said, but municipal bond markets froze with its onset. Separately, the parish council will consider asking voters to rededicate a 0.25 mil tax for culture and recreation that is less than 2 years old. Former Mayor President Joel Robideau persuaded voters to approve the tax, which generates about $500,000 annually. But Guillory, who took office January 6, cut the full-time position dedicated to programming the money to support local artists, outdoor facilities, and other tourism initiatives. The ballot proposition, if approved by council, would ask voters to rededicate 70% of the CREATE tax to incorporated parish fire protection and the remainder for roads and bridges. Catholic Charities to offer support to rural food banks by Ken Stickney. FoodNet, the food bank affiliated with Catholic Charities of Acadiana, has launched a temporary effort, the 7-Day Staples Project, to support smaller, primarily rural food pantries across Acadiana. Ben Broussard, spokesman for Catholic Charities, said the program launched Saturday and will begin making deliveries Wednesday. He said FoodNet has built relationships with rural food pantries that are especially hard-pressed by circumstances related to the coronavirus pandemic. It has always been in FoodNet's vision to find out what the smaller pantries need and support them, Broussard said, explaining that about a third of the 15 to 20 rural food pantries are short on food or have shut down, at least temporarily, because of the pandemic. He said FoodNet checks with the food pantries 2 or 3 times a week to make sure they have adequate supplies. Food banks can acquire and store more food than pantries, Broussard said. But the food pantries serve clients directly. No organization has a patent on how to respond, but essentially in this current disaster, we've got to know where we are going to know where we can be most effective. FoodNet typically distributes some 22,000 pounds of food every month to hungry families, but the need has been heightened during the pandemic as unemployment has soared. Food pantries in Crowley, Eunice, Rain, Opelousas, Sunset, and Grand Coteau have reported shortages in trying to satisfy food needs of the community. FoodNet began collecting funds Saturday to buy food for the 7-Day Staple Project, working through a web sale partnerships with Adrian's Grocery Store and Second Harvest Food Bank. More than $18,000 has been raised to support the project, but deliveries to clients will continue through the pandemic, so more is needed. Each $35 donation supplies a week's worth of food staples to a person in need, Broussard said. Volunteers will deliver those supplies to rural people who cannot access food themselves, sometimes for lack of transportation, sometimes because their local food pantries have closed. Marianne Guillory, who has operated the Eunice Food Bank for the past 5 years, said food pantries in Basile and Mallet have closed, which has sent hungry people, many recently furloughed from their jobs, into Eunice to seek food. She said some of those seeking help walk and pull wagons for several miles to seek food. Broussard said 6 to 8 volunteers will deliver food packets Wednesday to 155 homes, 277 people, where the needy cannot go to the pantries themselves. He said people can donate to classy.org/7-day staples project. That's classy, CLASSY.org/7, spell out 7-day staples project. Or by texting FoodNet, FOODNET, to 7979979, 797979, or by sending checks to Post Office Box 3177, Lafayette, Louisiana 70502. Those who need food should contact their local food pantries or call 225-232-HELP. Deadline extended for Southern University Ag Center's youth program. The application deadline has been extended to May 1st for Southern University's Ag Center's summer program called Beginning Agricultural Youth Opportunities Unlimited. The Bayou program, sponsored by the Center's Family and Consumer Scientists, runs for 3 weeks and will be held virtually June 7 through 26. It will provide high school seniors and incoming college freshmen an opportunity to gain firsthand knowledge about career opportunities in agriculture, family and consumer sciences, business, or the natural sciences. To qualify, students must have a minimum grade point average of 2.5 and have completed 11th grade. Graduating high school seniors must have either an ACT, SAT equivalent, composite score of 20 or above, or a 2.5 GPA, or rank in the top 50% of their high school graduation class. Require no more than one remedial course. To obtain an application, visit bit.ly/3CEH9 capital QF. For more information, email Harold Million at subayouc1@gmail.com. Let me spell that for you. SUBAYOUC1@gmail.com. Split jury verdicts struck down. The Supreme Court vote will affect hundreds of Louisiana cases. This is a story by John Zimmerman. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled on Monday that juries across the nation must be unanimous to convict or acquit a criminal defendant, outlawing the split verdicts that had persisted in Louisiana since openly racist lawmakers enshrined them in the state constitution during the Jim Crow era. In a 6-3 decision that crossed ideological lines, the High Court ruled the Sixth Amendment's right to a jury trial implicitly requires a unanimous verdict, and that the previously acknowledged need for jury consensus in federal courtrooms applies equally to state courts through the 14th Amendment. The decision will mean a new trial for Evangelisto Ramos of New Orleans, who was serving a life prison sentence after being convicted of murder in a 10-2 decision. It will immediately affect scores of other recent criminal convictions and hundreds of pending felony prosecutions in Louisiana and Oregon, the only 2 states to adopt non-unanimous jury verdicts in 1898 and 1934, respectively. Louisianans voted in 2018 to do away with the practice, overwhelmingly passing an amendment to the state constitution requiring unanimous juries in future cases. But the ruling, anticipated by many legal scholars, will still have a major impact here. It appears to hand new trials to as many as 100 Louisiana inmates who, like Ramos, were convicted by split juries and have not exhausted their appeals, according to defense advocates. It will mean all verdicts going forward must be unanimous. The 2019 amendment applied only to trials involving crimes that occurred after January 1, 2019. The decision will have no immediate impact on a much larger group of inmates that has run out of appeal options. We are heartened that the court has held once and for all that the promise of the Sixth Amendment fully applies in Louisiana, rejecting any concept of second-class justice, said Ben Cohen, an attorney at the New Orleans-based Promise of Justice Initiative, who brought the case on Ramos's behalf. At the center of the high court debate were the implications of overturning a nearly 50-year-old decision that Louisiana and Oregon took as vindication of their peculiar system for dispensing justice in felony cases, and how such a reversal could color future court decisions on unrelated issues such as abortion. The justices agreed, however, that the High Court's 1972 decision in Apodaca v. Oregon, which upheld split verdict laws in Louisiana and Oregon, was, in Justice Brett Kavanaugh's words, egregiously wrong. Justice Neil Gorsuch, a nominee of President Trump, along with Kavanaugh, called it gravely mistaken in the majority opinion. Wherever we might look to determine what the term trial by an impartial jury trial meant at the time of the Sixth Amendment's adoption, whether it's the common law, state practices in the founding era, or opinions and treatises written soon afterward, the answer is unmistakable. Gorsuch wrote, "A jury must reach an unanimous verdict in order to convict." Gorsuch wrote that the court took a strange turn in its 1972 decision on split verdicts when Justice Lewis Powell adopted a position that was neither here nor there while breaking a tie on the court. Since then, both Louisiana and Oregon chose to continue allowing non-unanimous verdicts, but their practices have always stood on shaky ground. He described the Apodaca ruling as an outlier on the day it was decided, one that's become lonelier with time. Much of the debate among the justices centered on the weight, if any, to give the court's 1972 decision in Apodaca and a companion case, Johnson versus Louisiana. Gorsuch and two other justices, Ruth Ginsburg and Stephen Breyer, concluded that the decision, which endorsed split verdicts by as few as 9 of 12 jurors in state courts, wasn't worthy of precedent at all. Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Justice Sonia Sotomayor also stressed the racist origins of the split verdict laws in both Louisiana and Oregon as factors that uniquely matter here, as Sotomayor wrote. Today, Louisiana's and Oregon's laws are fully and rightly relegated to the dustbin of history, she wrote, adding that overruling precedent here is not only warranted, but compelled. Kavanaugh noted evidence that the racism that spawned the split verdict law 120 years ago in Louisiana remains embedded within it today. After all, that was the whole point of adopting the non-unanimous jury requirement in the first place. And the math has not changed, Kavanaugh wrote. Then and now, non-unanimous juries can silence the voices and negate the votes of Black jurors, especially in cases with Black defendants or Black victims, and only 1 or 2 Black jurors. Those votings to require unanimous verdicts included 3 members of the court's liberal wing, Breyer, Ginsburg, and Sotomayor, and 3 conservatives, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Justice Clarence Thomas, ruled in favor of unanimous jury verdicts. The losing faction included 2 conservatives, Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Samuel Alito, and 1 liberal, Justice Elena Kagan. About 200 convictions in Oregon also will be overturned based on the decision, said Eliza Kaplan, a Lewis and Clark Law School professor who has advocated for junking the split verdict law in that state. I was surprised at how much the histories of those laws seem to matter in court. From the beginning, this was a legal issue. However, to not consider all the histories in these laws always seems inappropriate. I'm glad they addressed it in detail. Today in History by the Associated Press. Today is Tuesday, April 21, the 112th day of 2020. There are 254 days left in the year. On April 21, 1976, clinical trials of the swine flu vaccine began in Washington, D.C. That's pretty relevant. In 1509, England's King Henry VII died. He was succeeded by his 17-year-old son, Henry VIII. Great guy. In 1789, John Adams was sworn in as the first vice president of the United States. In 1836, an army of Texans led by Sam Houston defeated the Mexicans at San Jacinto, assuring Texas independence. In 1918, Manfred von Richthofen, who was 25 years old, the German ace known as the Red Baron, who was believed to have downed 80 enemy aircraft in World War I, was himself shot down and killed while in action over France. In 1926, Britain's Queen Elizabeth II was born in Mayfair, London. She was the first child of the Duke and Duchess of York, who later became King George VI and the Queen Mother. In 1930, fire broke out inside the overcrowded Ohio Penitentiary in Columbus, killing 332 inmates. Wow. In 1975, with communist forces closing in, South Vietnamese President Nguyen Van Thu resigned after nearly 10 years in office and fled the country. In 2009, the sole survivor of a pirate attack on an American cargo ship off the Somali coast, on which Captain Richard Phillips was held for ransom, was charged as an adult with piracy in federal court. In 2016, Prince, one of the most inventive and influential musicians of modern times, was found dead at his home in suburban Minneapolis. He was 57. 10 years ago, Pope Benedict the 16th promised church action to confront the clerical abuse scandal. 5 years ago, an Egyptian criminal court sentence ousted Islamic President Mohammed Morsi to 20 years in prison over the killing of protesters in 2012. Let's see, today's birthdays. Well, of course, obviously, Queen Elizabeth II's birthday is today, and she is 94. Actress, comedian, and writer Elaine May is 88. Actor Charles Grodin is 85. Sister Helen Prejean is 81. Iggy Pop is 73. Patti LuPone is 71. Tony Danza is 69. Andy McDowell is 62. Robert Smith of The Cure is 61. Let's see. Comedian Nicole Sullivan is 50. Olympic gold medal pairs figure skater Jamie Sale is 43. Tony Romo, former NFL quarterback, is 40. And let's see, I think that's good. The thought for today is by Charlotte Bronte, who lived from 1816 to 1855, and she wrote, "I try to avoid looking forward or backward and try to keep looking upward." Nice. Okay, our horoscope for today. So listen up. Might have something fun and positive in here, we hope. So for Taurus, get the facts and do what's right to avoid criticism and opposition. Focus on home, family, and improvements you can make yourself. Share your ideas and strive to make a difference. Gemini, do your best to help people in need. Your response to a cry for help will lead to people who have plenty to share. A relationship will face difficulties due to untruthfulness. Cancer, make choices based on your needs. Put work first to avoid financial uncertainty. Finish what you start before you take care of personal matters. Commit to meeting a deadline. Leo, take a serious look at your lifestyle and make adjustments that will help you move in a positive direction. Read the fine print before you commit to an unorthodox offer. Virgo, don't take a risk. Invest in yourself, not in someone else. Be moderate and take the time to do things right the first time. Excess is the enemy, while hard work is your ally. Libra, being a people pleaser can have its advantages if there is something you want in return. Be perfectly honest regarding your motives, and it will make your life less complicated. Scorpio, turn your talent into cash. Adjust your living space to accommodate your pursuits. If you adapt to current economic trends, it will lend to good fortune. Do what will make you happy. Sagittarius, Confusion will set in if you have too many choices. You may not welcome a change, but if you are willing to adapt and compromise, something good will transpire. Capricorn, take the path that makes the most sense to you. Don't feel that you must follow in someone's footsteps. Make your choice clear and let your actions confirm your decision. Aquarius, put your head down and concentrate on what you want to achieve. Your strength will come from following your heart and doing what's best for you. Pisces, assess each situation face and make choices based on what's reasonable. Say no to anyone tempting you with something that's not good for you emotionally, physically, or financially. Aries, speak up and be bold and honest about your intentions and plans. A personal problem that seems impossible to fix will turn around quickly if you make a positive adjustment. Please don't forget that this horoscope is an entertainment feature and is not based on scientific fact. Okay, we have a few more minutes, so I will go read a couple more PSAs to help you through this time. For instance, keeping calm through a COVID hotline. Now, if you are feeling overwhelmed with stress or fear and anxiety about the uncertainty surrounding this public health emergency, there is a special keeping calm through COVID hotline you can call. This connects you to trained, compassionate counselors who can offer support and who can direct you to mental health and substance abuse counseling services. Trained counselors are available 24/7. All calls are confidential. So please call if you're feeling stress, fear, anxiety, or having any kind of problem. 866-310-7977. Medicaid resources. If you have lost your job or if you have reduced hours, you may be eligible for Medicaid. You can apply online at mymedicaid.la.gov. That would be mymedicaid.la.gov. You can also apply by phone by calling 888-342-6207 or by mail by sending information to Louisiana Medicaid, Post Office Box 91283. Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 70821. Local Medicaid offices are currently
Well, it appears listeners.
www.311lafayette.services. Call centers with volunteers and medical professionals are active 24/7 to answer your questions about COVID-19 and determine if you need to get screened. 311 and press option 2 if you are a business owner, employee, or are looking for a job to get information about applying for small business recovery loans, to apply for unemployment benefits and related programs. And I think that's pretty much it for us today. Looks like we're about a minute away from closing up. I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you for listening to our broadcast. My name is Danon, and I just want to encourage you to stay home. I know it's there's a real, I think, itch for us all to get out, but we need to stay the course. So stay home as long as you can until it's told. And if you do go out, and you can use like a bandana or something to cover your mouth when you go into stores and stuff. Doesn't hurt. Don't listen to all the naysayers out there that say you shouldn't be doing that. Doesn't look silly. It looks pretty good, actually. So don't be afraid to do that. And you have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.